Welcome to the Armada EW podcast with your host Tom Withington at the controls. The so-called Fourth Industrial Revolution is having an impact on the Asia-Pacific defense landscape. This fusion of technologies across the biological, physical and digital spheres has profound implications for EW practitioners in the region and beyond. Tate Nurkin, founder of the OTH Intelligence Group and non-resident senior fellow at the Atlantic Council, has just written a report published by the Atlantic Council entitled The Five Revolutions, Examining Defense Innovation in the Indo-Pacific Region. His report examines several aspects of defense innovation in the region, and he joins us today. Tate, it's good to have you with us. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much, Tom. Great to be here.
We hear a lot of discussion of the Fourth Industrial Revolution. Talk us through your five revolutions.
That's a lot of revolutions. My impetus for the five revolutions goes back probably 7 or 8 years to when I first started looking in depth at technologies were shaping the future of military capabilities and competitions. And it just became a little overwhelming, frankly, to try and track all of the different efforts that were taking place, not just within defense communities, but within applied research and academia and the commercial sector, in innovation in these new technologies. And the list of technologies kept expanding as well. So I decided that it may be more useful and efficient for me to look not at the technologies, at the inputs, but rather at the outputs. So instead of tracking the what, I started thinking about the so what was actually trying to be achieved through the innovation in these technologies. And that's when I came up with these five revolutions. Originally it was 4, by the way. I've refined this. Things do move. But the five revolutions are really what I see as being the 5 areas, 5 kind of step changes in capabilities that militaries across the Indo-Pacific and really across the world want to achieve. And the first one is toward perfect situational awareness. So this is a revolution in perception, processing, and cognition, largely built around smart sensors and machine learning and the ability to speed up the first 3 phases of Colonel John Boyd's OODA loop, so the observe, orient, and decide. The second is hyper-enabled platforms and people, so a revolution in human and platform performance. And I know it may sound strange to lump people and machines together, but in reality, militaries and security communities through innovation are trying to achieve roughly the same thing for people and machines, right? They want them to be stronger, faster, more resilient, more survivable, have more endurance, be able to stay in the field longer. The third revolution is new efficiencies in the impending design age, so a revolution in manufacturing, supply chain, and logistics. And I think of all the areas, this one has perhaps the most revolutionary impact when you combine additive manufacturing, design, digital design, cloud manufacturing, new materials. You can really think not only of new possibles in terms of what capabilities future platforms and systems can do, but also in the logistics that support them. The fourth revolution is connectivity, lethality, and flexibility. So this is a revolution in communication, navigation, targeting, and strike. So this is more of the act of the OODA loop. And you can see through hypersonic missiles, through a range of other technologies, there's a lot going on. Quantum-insured PNT, there's a lot going on in this area. And then the last one, which was the one I added, was monitoring, manipulation, weaponization, a revolution in cyber and information operations. And as I did more research into sort of AI-enabled cyber, offensive and defensive cyber, and AI-enabled disinformation, it became clear that this needed to stand alone and not just be something that we talked about as being part of the other 4 verticals.
Your report examines developments in the Asia-Pacific space and cyber warfare realms. Are we seeing a convergence of these domains with electronic warfare in the region?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's definitely one of the features of the report. And I think a couple of things are going on here. The first is just the prominence of these domains, space, cyber, and the EM spectrum. The Defense of Japan 2020 document, so the big white paper that's produced every 1 or 2 years, calls these the 3 new domains of warfare. And of course, they're not new necessarily, but interest in them is certainly enhanced. And you see technologies being developed for these domains. For example, Australia's Defense Science and Technology 2030 document released earlier this year highlight resilient multi-mission space, information warfare, agile command and control, quantum-insured PNT as some of the biggest priorities for defense investment. And they're not alone. Countries around the region are not just investing in these technologies, they're organizing around these domains. So you see the development of military cyber commands in Singapore and Australia, and space commands in India and Japan and the United States. So I think that these areas have become so central to the future of conflict, not necessarily always just kinetic combat. and they are beginning to bleed together, which is why you see, for example, the PLA in late 2015 established a strategic support force that pulls together all the components of the PLA that looked at electronic warfare, space, cyber, and psychological operations. So I think this is one of the really interesting things about the report, that there's a convergence, at least, of operations across these domains.
Australia and Japan, along with South Korea and others, all have vibrant technology industrial bases. Is there scope for multilateral cooperation to spread the cost and burden of developing very advanced defense systems in the future?
Yeah, I think there is. And I think we're starting to see that really happen a little bit more over the last several months, certainly within 2020. Part of that is because of a growing awareness of some of the challenges to regional status quo and security that China is driving. You see it in terms of the reinvigoration of the Quad, and not just the defense relationships between the U.S. and its other Quad partners, although those are all interesting and worth examining, including India. But we've seen now defense relationships being formed between the Quad members themselves. So earlier this year, Japan and Australia signed 2 separate defense agreements, one for reciprocal training, which was a huge breakthrough for Japan. It hasn't had a status of forces agreement like that in 60 years since it signed one with the U.S. But a second one that did reference engagement on defense technology and defense industrial engagement, which is really, I think, probably where more of this is going to head, is these relationships that maybe involve the U.S. but not always explicitly. And it's really interesting because all 3 of the countries that we really delve into in this report, India, China, Australia, and Japan, they all have a very strong focus on developing their own defense industries domestically. So I think one of the interesting things to watch is how these joint defense, technology research and development, capability development, how it happens between these partners and between the U.S. and these partners, while still servicing that overall objective of building a stronger, more self-reliant defense industrial base in these countries.
What are the implications, do you feel, of defense industrial developments in the region for some of those countries' allies outside it?
It's a great question. I do think that it offers potentially new partners for development. One of the things that I was really kind of encouraged to see as someone who particularly focused on U.S. national security and defense issues was the establishment back, I think it was in September of this year, of a group of 13 nations who came together to sort of talk about responsible development of artificial intelligence for defense purposes. And it was led by the Joint Artificial Intelligence Center at DoD, but there are 13 other nations throughout the world, including the countries we've talked about on this podcast. So I think it maybe expands the group of nations that can come together to agree on some of the standards in terms of technology development and application and testing that I think will be critically important as we see more potential applications of artificial intelligence, unmanned systems, other types of advanced technologies. And so having some agreement around how they're supposed to be used, I think can be very, very helpful in countering maybe some of the less toward applications of these technologies.
Lots of food for thought in your report, Tate, and for future discussion as well, I feel. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, my absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me.
You can download a copy of Tate Nurkin's report at 5-revolutions-report.pdf. Don't forget that more EW news and analysis can be found at www.armadainternational.com/electronic warfare. That's all for now. Thanks for listening.